My name is Marshall Tate, and last Saturday was supposed to be my day. 36 years on this earth, and for once I thought maybe, just maybe, someone would make it about me. I know how that sounds, selfish, childish even. But after years of being the afterthought in my own life, is it so wrong to hope for a little attention? Clarissa, my wife of 9 years, knew how much it mattered to me. I didn't ask for anything big. No parties, no fancy gifts, just dinner together, maybe a small cake. Maybe even a quiet dance in the living room like we used to do when we had nothing but each other and dreams we hadn't crushed yet. When the night came, she told me she had a surprise planned. She said she booked a table at a nice restaurant somewhere new, somewhere special. I believed her like an idiot. I spent the afternoon trying to pick the right shirt, shaving twice to make sure my face was perfectly smooth, and rehearsing jokes in my head to make her laugh like she used to. I even dug out the old watch she bought me years ago when she still remembered the kind of man I was. We drove separately, which felt weird, but she said she had errands to run first. When I arrived, the place was stunning. Low lighting, polished wood, music playing just soft enough to make you lean closer to hear each other. I stood there like a fool at the entrance, craning my neck, looking for her. And then I saw her. She was already seated at a corner table, not alone. Across from her sat a man I didn't recognize. Tall, clean-cut, dressed like he actually belonged in a place like this. Clarissa was laughing at something he said, her head tilted back the way she used to when we were first dating. She reached across the table and touched his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stood frozen for a second too long. I told myself maybe it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe he was a coworker. Maybe she was planning a surprise party and he was part of it. I was so desperate to believe anything but the truth that I didn't notice how not one single chair was pulled out for me. I walked up slowly, like some background character who didn't realize the scene had moved on without him. She finally noticed me, and the look on her face wasn't shock or guilt or even sadness. It was annoyance, like I was the one interrupting her perfect evening. "Marshall," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're early for my own birthday dinner." The man across from her barely glanced at me before looking back at her like I wasn't even worth the effort. We sat there, or at least I sat there. She didn't invite me to join. She didn't even introduce him. I felt like a coat someone had left on a chair. I watched as she gave him all her attention, laughed at his jokes, leaned closer when he spoke in low tones. Every minute felt like peeling off another layer of my skin. And on my birthday, I stayed longer than I should have, trying to pretend it didn't hurt, pretending it was normal, pretending I was still her husband and not just some outdated piece of furniture she didn't know how to throw away yet. Finally, when she reached across the table and brushed a crumb from his cheek like she used to do for me, something inside me cracked. Quietly, I pushed my chair back. I didn't say a word. I didn't throw a scene. I didn't even finish my drink. I just got up and walked out, and that's when everything changed. The cold night air hit me like a slap as I stumbled out of the restaurant. I didn't even grab my jacket from the stand. It was still hanging there alone, just like me. Funny how the small things stick in your mind when your world is cracking open. I shoved my hands into my pockets and wandered down the block without a real plan, feeling like a balloon that had slipped its string and floated aimlessly into the dark. I could have gone home, but the thought of sitting in that empty house, surrounded by the memories of who we used to be, made my skin crawl. Every room in that place was haunted now, haunted by the version of Clarissa that used to love me without looking over my shoulder for someone better. I ended up at a grimy little bar a few streets over, the kind of place where the lights are so low, no one sees you cry into your drink. I sat at the far end of the counter and ordered something strong, something that would burn on the way down and maybe, if I was lucky, numb the jagged edges tearing through my chest. The bartender, a woman with tired eyes and chipped red nails, poured me a double without asking any questions. She must have seen my kind 1,000 times before, the man whose world just collapsed but is too cowardly to scream about it. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to tell someone, but I didn't even know where to start. I stared at the amber liquid, turning the glass in slow circles and kept seeing Clarissa's face when she looked at him. That soft, open look she used to save just for me. The way her fingers lingered on his wrist. The The way she leaned in like she couldn't get close enough. And the way she looked through me like I was invisible. One drink turned into two. Two turned into four. I don't even remember when I started muttering to myself, replaying every moment from the last few months, stitching together the lies I had ignored. The late nights at the office, the new lingerie tags I found stuffed in the trash, the way she always kept her phone face down lately. I wasn't blind. I was just hoping, praying, pretending. At some point, I stumbled into the grimy bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at the stranger in the mirror. Red eyes, crooked tie, the faint trace of hope still clinging to the corners of my mouth like a man waiting for a miracle that was never coming. I didn't go home that night. I crashed in my car a few blocks away, curled up like a beaten dog in the back seat. My birthday card from my mother crumpled on the passenger side floor. "You deserve all the happiness in the world, son." "Yeah, Mom. If only you knew." The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Clarissa. Not a call, not an apology, just a text. "You didn't have to make a scene. It was important business." Business. That's what she called it. Business. Like brushing a crumb off another man's cheek was some sort of corporate strategy. I should have gotten angry. I should have sent back something brutal, something that would shatter her smug little world the way she shattered mine. But I didn't. I just stared at the screen until the words blurred into nothing. Because deep down, some small, pathetic part of me still wanted her to chase me. Still wanted her to say it was a mistake. That it was me she loved, not him. That she just got confused. That we could fix it. God, I hated myself for that. And yet, I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. If she wanted to play games, fine. I would find out everything. Every lie, every betrayal. And when I was done, there wouldn't be anything left for her to hide behind. This time, I wasn't going to be the fool waiting quietly by the door. I spent the next few days in a haze, moving through life like a man trapped underwater. Everything around me felt muffled, distant, unreal. Clarissa acted like nothing had happened. She came home late, left early, and barely looked at me when she was there. If I tried to bring anything up, she would brush it off with a quick excuse. Busy day, tired, deadlines, all the standard nonsense people say when they've already decided you're no longer worth their time. But even in my pathetic, broken state, I wasn't completely blind anymore. I started noticing the little details. The way she kept smiling at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. The sudden urgency whenever she had to step out for a call. The new perfume she wore, something expensive and sharp. Nothing like the soft floral scents she used to love. The fact that her wedding ring, the one she insisted on getting engraved with "Forever Yours," had mysteriously disappeared from her finger. I told myself I needed proof, real proof, something undeniable. Something that would rip away the last tiny thread of hope I was stupid enough to cling to. So, one night while she was out with coworkers, I cracked the password on her old tablet. She had gotten lazy with security lately. Or maybe she just didn't care if I found out anymore. Either way, it wasn't hard. And what I found, it was worse than I imagined. Hidden in the messaging app were conversations. Hundreds of them. Long threads of laughing, flirting, explicit suggestions, things she hadn't said to me in years, and pictures. Pictures of her in dresses I had never seen. Pictures of her in outfits that left very little to the imagination, posing, smirking, sending them to him. The man's name was Caleb. Apparently, they met at her company's networking event 2 months ago. Apparently, he was different, exciting, not boring like Marshall. Her words, not mine. I sat there for hours, scrolling through the wreckage of my marriage, feeling the weight of every betrayal settle into my bones. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just hollow, like someone had scooped everything good out of me and left nothing but skin and memories. At one point, I found a video. I should have stopped there. I should have had enough self-respect to shut it off, but no. I hit play. Clarissa was in a hotel room wearing the dress she had told me she bought for a meeting, giggling, twirling, falling onto the bed while Caleb filmed her with his phone. She looked so alive, so happy, so beautiful, and none of it, not a single second, was for me. I slammed the tablet shut and dropped it on the floor. The screen cracked. a spiderweb of shattered glass slicing across her smiling face. I don't know how long I sat there after that, just staring at nothing. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. Eventually, I got up, grabbed a blanket, and crashed on the couch. I couldn't stand the idea of sleeping next to her. Not anymore. Not after seeing what real happiness looked like on her face when I wasn't the reason for it. And yet, despite all of it, some stupid, broken part of me still thought maybe, just maybe, she would wake up the next morning and look at me the way she used to. Maybe she'd see the man she married instead of the ghost she had created. Maybe she'd remember. Maybe she'd fight for us. I was wrong. So very, very wrong. The next morning, Clarissa acted like it was just another day. She moved around the kitchen, humming under her breath, flipping through her phone, sipping coffee from the mug I bought her on our first anniversary. The one that said, "Forever starts now." I watched her from the hallway, half hidden behind the wall, feeling like a stranger peeking into someone else's life. I wondered how she could be so normal after everything. I wondered if I had ever really known her at all. Maybe Clarissa had been slipping away from me for years and I was just too blind or too desperate to see it. I didn't say anything. I didn't confront her. I didn't demand answers. I just stood there swallowing down everything I wanted to scream, feeling smaller and smaller until I was nothing but a shadow clinging to the frame of a man she used to love. When she left for work, I sat at the kitchen table staring at her empty chair. The plate she left behind still had crumbs on it. She didn't even bother to clear it. She used to be meticulous about things like that. She used to care. After an hour of sitting there fighting the rising panic in my chest, I made a decision. If she wasn't going to tell me the truth, I was going to force myself to face it. I pulled out the old file box from our closet, the one where we kept all the boring stuff. Bills, receipts, contracts, and buried underneath stacks of old insurance forms, I found what I was looking for. Her planner. Clarissa wasn't very tech-savvy. Despite all her other deceptions, she still wrote things down the old-fashioned way. And there it was, plain as day. Scribbled between her work meetings and gym classes. Saturday, 8 p.m. Cal, Hotel Atlantic. 2 days from now. Felt like the floor gave out beneath me. Even after everything I had seen, part of me still hadn't truly believed she was capable of doing this to me. But there it was, written in her own perfect handwriting, like an appointment, like cheating on me was just another task to check off her list before the weekend. I didn't cry. Not then, not even later. The tears were buried somewhere too deep to reach now. Instead, I did something even more pathetic. I circled the date with a red pen, like some desperate fool marking the day his life officially ended. I needed to see it. I needed to see them together with my own eyes. Maybe then, maybe if I witnessed it myself, my heart would finally understand what my mind already knew. So I made a plan. I would go to that hotel. I would sit in my car across the street, and I would wait. I wouldn't storm in. I wouldn't scream or fight or cause a scene. I would just watch the woman I loved betray me in real time until there was nothing left inside me but silence. 2 days, 2 endless, brutal days to sit with the knowledge. 2 days to pretend everything was normal every time she walked past me without a second glance. 2 days to act like her lies hadn't already rotted everything between us into something unrecognizable. I didn't know if I would survive it, but I knew I couldn't live like this anymore. I deserved to know the truth, even if it killed what little was left of me. Those 2 days crawled by slower than anything I had ever experienced in my life. I went through the motions like some broken machine. Eat, shower, work. But none of it mattered. Every second was just a countdown to the moment I would see it all with my own eyes. The anxiety sat heavy in my chest, a constant weight that no amount of distraction could shake off. Clarissa floated through those days, smiling at her phone, humming to herself, treating me like a piece of old furniture gathering dust in the corner. It was clear she had already made peace with whatever she was about to do. I was the only one still pretending we had anything left worth saving. On the night of the appointment, I left the house a few hours early under the pretense of grabbing dinner with an old friend. Clarissa barely lifted her head from her phone to say goodbye. I stood there for a moment, waiting, hoping for something, a flicker of guilt, a sign of hesitation, anything at all. but she just nodded absently and went right back to texting. Probably him, probably planning whatever little romantic fantasy they thought they deserved. I drove to the Hotel Atlantic and parked across the street in a shadowy corner where I wouldn't be noticed. The neon sign buzzed faintly overhead, casting a sickly red glow across the parking lot. I sat there gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to claw its way out. Time moved strangely. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like years. Around 8:15 p.m., I saw her car pull in. My chest tightened so violently I thought I might actually pass out. Clarissa stepped out wearing a short, dark red dress, one I had never seen before. She looked stunning, radiant, like the version of her I used to dream about when we first met. Only now, that beauty wasn't mine to admire anymore. It belonged to him. Seconds later, another car pulled in behind hers. Caleb. I recognized him instantly, even from a distance. Tall, confident, that same smug aura that radiated even across the lot. He walked right up to her without hesitation, placed his hand on the small of her back like he owned her, and they both disappeared into the hotel together without so much as a glance back, like I didn't exist, like I had never existed. I sat there frozen, staring at the entrance long after the door swung shut behind them. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. I couldn't even breathe properly. Everything I had suspected, everything I had feared was now a living, breathing reality I could never unsee. And yet, somehow, sitting there in that dark car, I realized something even worse. I still loved her. Even after all of it, even after she chose someone else, even after she left me sitting alone in the ruins of what we built, that pathetic, broken part of me still wanted her. Still wanted to believe there was something worth fighting for. I hated myself for that weakness more than I had ever hated anything before. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, I finally tore my eyes away from the hotel door. I started the engine, pulled away from the curb, and drove aimlessly through the city streets, not knowing where I was going, not caring. At some point, I ended up down by the river where Clarissa and I used to come when we first moved to this town. We used to sit on the old wooden benches and dream about the future, back when we actually had one. I sat there staring out over the black water, my mind spinning in 1,000 different directions, each one darker than the last. Was it my fault? Had I not been enough? Was there something broken in me that pushed her away? I replayed every fight, every silence, every missed opportunity to hold her closer instead of letting the distance grow. Maybe if I had just tried harder. Maybe if I had just been better. But deep down, under all the self-loathing and regret, a tiny voice whispered the truth. No matter how much I hated myself, no matter how much I wanted to believe I had failed, the real betrayal was hers. She made the choice. She made it every day she lied to my face. Every night she texted him under our roof. Every time she laughed at another man's jokes while pretending I didn't exist. This wasn't about my failures. This was about her betrayal. And for the first time in a very long time, something inside me started to harden. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to plead. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let her walk away without knowing exactly what she had thrown away. The next morning, the sun crept through the blinds, but I didn't feel it. I hadn't slept. I sat there all night, perched on the edge of the couch, staring blankly at the silent television screen, my mind looping through the same miserable questions over and over. Clarissa came home around 6 a.m. I heard the door creak open, her heels clicking quietly on the wood floors, the faint smell of unfamiliar cologne trailing behind her like a ghost. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. I just listened as she tiptoed through the house, careful not to wake me, or so she thought. She slipped into the bathroom, the shower turning on a few minutes later, as if she could wash away the evidence of where she'd been, who she'd been with. When she finally emerged, dressed in her old, oversized sweatshirt like the perfect, innocent wife, she found me sitting there, still silent, watching. Her face froze for just a fraction of a second, a tiny crack in her polished mask, but she recovered quickly. She offered a small, tired smile like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just spent the night in another man's arms. "Morning," she said, her voice light, Too light. You're up early. I stared at her, searching for the woman I used to know, and found nothing but a stranger wearing my wife's skin. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. I wanted to grab her shoulders and shake the truth out of her until she couldn't lie anymore. But I didn't. I just gave a tight nod, stood up, and walked past her without a word. I could feel her watching me as I went into the kitchen, pretending everything was fine. She wanted normal. She wanted to pretend this was still salvageable. She wanted me to play dumb, to accept the scraps she was offering, to let her keep living her double life without consequence. I couldn't do it anymore. I spent the day cleaning the house. Not normal cleaning, not wiping down counters or vacuuming rugs. No, I was erasing us. I took down every photo of us together. I pulled my clothes from the shared closet and stuffed them into boxes. I collected every gift she had ever given me. The cheesy mugs, the anniversary cards, the framed picture from our honeymoon, and piled them in the center of the living room like a funeral pyre. Clarissa watched me with wide, confused eyes when she got home from running her errands. She opened her mouth to say something, but for once, I beat her to it. "I know," I said quietly. "I know everything." Her mouth snapped shut. She stood there pale and frozen, like a deer caught in headlights. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "I saw you," I continued, my voice low and steady, steadier than I felt, "at the hotel. With him." Clarissa swallowed hard. I could see the gears turning in her head, the frantic scrambling for an excuse, a lie, anything to salvage the situation. "It's not what you think," she said finally, her voice trembling slightly. It's complicated." I laughed then, a hollow, broken sound that didn't even sound like me anymore. "Complicated," I echoed. "You booked a hotel room with another man, Clarissa, on my birthday weekend. There's nothing complicated about that." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't move to comfort her. Not this time. She had cried for him. She had smiled for him. She could save her tears now. I felt lost," she whispered. "We were drifting apart. I needed something. And instead of telling me," I said, my voice raw, "you found someone else." She nodded miserably, wiping at her cheeks. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "You didn't mean to?" I repeated, my anger finally breaking through the numbness. "You meant every lie you told me, every secret you kept. You chose him, Clarissa. Over and over again, you chose him." She stood there sobbing quietly, looking so small, so pathetic. But I didn't feel pity anymore. I just felt tired. "I'm leaving," I said finally, my voice quiet but firm. "You can keep the house. You can keep your new life. I'm done fighting for someone who already walked away." I turned and left her standing there in the wreckage of what we once were, the boxes of our life together stacked neatly by the door. And for the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt something new. Not anger, not sadness, not even love, freedom. It was just the beginning of what was coming next. Leaving wasn't as cinematic as people like to pretend it is. There was no dramatic slam of the door, no thunderstorm raging overhead, no triumphant music swelling in the background. It was just me dragging 2 battered suitcases to my old, beat-up car and pulling out of the driveway without even a glance back. Clarissa didn't chase after me. She didn't call out my name. She didn't fall to her knees begging for forgiveness. I don't even know if she watched me leave. Maybe she was already on the phone with him planning her next rendezvous. Maybe she was relieved. I rented a room at a cheap motel on the other side of town, the kind of place where nobody asked questions, and the walls were thin enough that you could hear your neighbor's television through the night. The bed was lumpy, the carpet smelled like mildew, and the heater rattled every few minutes like it was dying. But it was mine. It was my own space, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't have to pretend. I didn't have to smile through the pain or shrink myself down to fit into someone else's fantasy. The loneliness hit me harder than I expected. It didn't come in waves. It was a constant, relentless pressure sitting on my chest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, laughing at another man's jokes, running her fingers along his arm, building a new world without me. I kept wondering if she missed me at all, if she even noticed the hole I left behind. I knew the answer deep down. She had already filled it with someone else. On the second night, I found myself scrolling through my phone, looking at old photos I hadn't been brave enough to delete yet. There we were, smiling on the beach during our first vacation. There we were, moving into our first apartment, sweaty and exhausted, but so damn happy. There we were, slow dancing in the living room under a single flickering light bulb because we couldn't afford a real chandelier yet. I wanted to reach into those pictures and shake the younger version of myself. Warn him, tell him that love, no matter how pure, isn't always enough to hold two people together when one of them has already decided to leave. A few friends texted me asking where I had been. I lied, said I was taking some time for myself, said I needed a break from the city, said anything but the truth because how do you even start that conversation? Hey, my wife found someone better and forgot to tell me. Hope you're doing well. I thought about calling my brother, but I couldn't stand the thought of hearing the pity in his voice. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't want advice. I didn't even know what I wanted anymore. On the third day, something inside me cracked. I realized that if I didn't do something, anything, I was going to drown in my own misery. So I got up, threw on a jacket, and drove. No destination, no plan, just the open road and the cold wind pouring through the cracked window of my car. I ended up 2 towns over at a little diner off the highway, the kind of place with faded booths, chipped coffee mugs, and waitresses who called you Han, even when you looked like hell. I sat there for hours, nursing a cup of bitter coffee and scribbling into a battered notebook I found under the passenger seat. I wrote everything I couldn't say out loud. The anger, the grief, the pathetic longing that still clung to me like a second skin. And somewhere between one terrible cup of coffee and the next, it hit me. Clarissa's betrayal wasn't the end of me. It was the end of who I had been for too long. A man who begged for scraps of love from someone who had already given her heart away. It hurt. God, it hurt more than anything. But it was also the first real beginning I had felt in years. I wasn't ready to move on. I wasn't healed. I wasn't strong yet. But for the first time, I saw a glimpse of the road ahead, and it didn't have her on it. It took a few more weeks before I could really breathe again without feeling like my chest might cave in. The motel room eventually gave way to a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but it was clean, quiet, and entirely mine. There were no silent, accusing walls here. No reminders of broken promises. No scent of cheap cologne clinging to the furniture. Just space. Empty at first. But sometimes empty is exactly what you need when you're trying to rebuild yourself from the ground up. I filled the place slowly. A second-hand couch from a thrift store. A scratched-up kitchen table someone had left by the curb. A few houseplants that I wasn't sure I could keep alive, but decided to try anyway. Every item, every tiny decision felt like stitching a new patch onto the torn fabric of my life. Clarissa tried to reach out a few times. Texts mostly. Can we talk? I miss you. It didn't mean anything. But by then, I was done chasing ghosts. I didn't even open the last few messages. I didn't need to. I finally understood something that had eluded me for too long. When someone shows you how little you matter to them, believe them. I picked up extra shifts at work, not because I had to, but because it felt good to be busy, to be building something that was mine alone. I started going to the gym again, not to punish myself, but to feel stronger, more capable. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during the slow collapse of my marriage. And for the first time in years, when they asked how I was doing, I didn't have to lie. One Saturday, about 3 months after I left, I found myself sitting by the river again, the same spot where Clarissa and I used to dream about the future. But this time, I wasn't haunted by what we lost. I was thinking about what I still had, about what I could still create. The water was calm, glinting under the early spring sun. Families laughed nearby. Kids skipped stones across the surface. The world hadn't ended after all. It had simply shifted, making room for something new. That night, back at my little apartment, I looked around at the mismatched furniture, the crooked pictures on the walls, the overwatered plants clinging stubbornly to life, and I smiled. A real, genuine smile, the kind I thought I might never feel again. I wasn't the same man who had sat alone in that dark car outside the Hotel Atlantic, shattered and invisible. I was someone new, someone stronger, someone who had learned painfully, slowly, that sometimes losing everything you thought you needed is the only way to find yourself again. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if love would find me again someday or if it even needed to. All I knew was that for the first time in a very long time I was enough. And honestly, that was more than enough for